Good.
All righty. Very good. Thank you, and good evening or afternoon or morning, depending on what time you see this. My name is Crandall Jones. I'm the Municipal Administrator for Norristown, and we wanted to share with you the budget presentation for 2024 for the municipality. You'll be able to see this on our social media and also get hard copies of our budget and this presentation, if you like, from the Municipal Hall, if you're so interested in doing it. With that, I'll get started. So our agenda today is to discuss an overview of where we are in our 2023 budget as far as the budget status, our staff's fiscal projections for 2024, and we saw it last night in our initial presentation where we made the budget public effective today, which is November the 9th. I have to get that. So today, November the 9th, the budget is now public, and so it can be seen, both the detail of the budget presentation itself we made to council this summer is available. And so we did ask, and we'll continue to ask as we get toward the to council adoption of budget, any input from council so that they can make a final decision in terms of both the budget and the millage rate to support that budget. So starting with 2023 and where we find ourselves today in the current budget. The good news, we have seen our Act 511 taxes actually trend $800,000 higher than we projected. Understanding that we are always very conservative in our projections, we don't want to overestimate revenues and find ourselves on the bad end of that. But as far as earned income taxes, business privilege taxes, etc., we find ourselves in a good position where we've actually collected $800,000 more than we projected in our budget. As far as interest earnings that we have on the bank accounts and investment accounts that we have, we're trending to be $200,000 higher than we budgeted also. And that's, of course, because interest rates have risen by the Fed over the last year or so, and so obviously that's going to result in higher yields on money. As you may know, we did receive a couple of years ago $20.2 million in American Rescue Act funds directly from the federal government, and the council has been allocating money for projects that have been undertaken as a result of those funds. And so that accounts, those ARPA funds, federal funds, account for most of why that interest earnings has risen to that level. And certainly that's a good thing for the municipality, having more cash on hand to undertake operational and capital needs. Our health benefits expenses were lower than we expected them to be and estimated them to be as well. As a matter of fact, we're about $500,000 under what we projected that to be. That has to do with a number of things. We do get rebates related to the safety programs and health programs we have in place in the municipality. We also have staffing shortages, and so when you don't have staff that you're not paying for benefits, obviously that's going to lower your expense. And then we also had a lower rate increase for 2023 in terms of our insurance premiums than we had projected. So that's another reason why we came under budget. As far as where we are now with ARPA funds, again, I shared that we received $20.2 million in 2020, I believe it was, for our 2021 for those funds. We budgeted $942,000 in funds that will be utilized for 2023. And if we do have any excess funds over that, we'll take those funds and transfer the remaining to our capital improvement accounts, CIP accounts for future capital projects. And those are large scale projects that we have to undertake work. It might be infrastructure, it might be the purchase of large equipment, etc., that we use those funds for. So, what do we have to deal with as far as at this point in terms of the 2024 budget? Well, when we initially presented our first take of this budget back to council, I guess about a month ago, we came to them with a $1.4 million gap between revenues and expenditures. We wanted to seek their input in terms of things and options we had in terms of reducing that gap and make sure that we covered the things that were priorities for the council. We've been doing a lot of work since that first review with council, and now we narrowed that gap so that there's now a $736,000 gap, almost half the gap that we had before we brought it down. I will say, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge certainly our finance director, Kathy Feister, and our, I don't even know what Alicia's
senior analyst.
She's our analyst. We affectionately call her the Grim Reaper. But they do such a wonderful job with the municipality in terms of leading us through this process. And we spend a good deal of time with them, with the department heads, who I'll acknowledge in terms of doing the things we need to do to pare down and get a budget in front of council that they can ultimately adopt. But through all of that work with Kathy and Pfister, I don't know why I said Pfister, but with Kathy and Alicia and the team, we brought the gap down. So, as far as 2024, our revenues we project are going to remain relatively flat. And usually that's unless the tax rate is increased or the tax basis is increased through development, our revenues tend to remain flat. Now, when that happens, like I said, a tax rate, that $1.4 million that gap that we started with was actually close to 2 mills of taxes if it was going to be taxes that was going to close that gap. We are at right now, our valuation for property millage rate in Norristown is about $890,000. And so 1 mil of tax in Norristown yields about $890,000. I always kind of pause on this to give just a quick lesson in millage rates, because I know a lot of folks say, how can our taxes be so much higher than King of Prussia's and other communities? It all goes to this whole issue of tax basis that makes that happen. As I just said, a mill in Norristown is $890,000. So in order for us to say get $4 million of revenue in Norristown to do, to get our budget together, if we needed to do that, we need to have 8 mills of tax, 5 mills of tax, I'm sorry, 5 times 8. Almost 5 mills of tax that we would have to assess, or council would have to assess. To do the same things, let's say in King of Prussia, 1 mill in King of Prussia is somewhere between $3 and $4 million. And so to get 5 mills of $5 million in King of Prussia, $4 million in King of Prussia, it's 1 mill. It's 1 mill of tax. So it's not apples to apples in terms of how taxes work. So our tax base is the valuation of all of the properties in Norristown is something along the line of $890 million plus. The valuation of all of the property in the King of Prussia is billions of dollars. And that's the difference in what makes property tax work. So, development helps that. And one of the things we should all be happy about is that, I know it's not always convenient as far as all the construction that's happening in Norristown. But that development is a sign of progress, and ultimately that stuff is going to come out of the ground in terms of houses and businesses, etc., that are going to increase the value of our millage rate, that will ultimately decrease what taxes can be because our millage is worth more. So that's why development is important as well, and gives us an opportunity not to rely on taxing residents and businesses who are in Norristown, but increasing the values of our properties. So also, one of the issues that we always have, as everybody else does, is that our expenditures increase annually due to inflation, as everybody else. We pay for gas, we pay for paper, we pay for food, we pay for all the things that everybody else pays for, and so we have to adjust for that. And then also we have salary increases. The majority of employees in Norristown are actually contractual employees, so they have negotiated contracts. I negotiate 5 different contracts on behalf of the municipal council. We have contracts that we negotiate for fire, police, laborers, for crossing guards, and for the administrative staff of various organizations in the municipality. So usually those salaries are negotiated in 3 to 4 year chunks, and so we budget for what those salaries are, and their increases are factored into what we need to do, raises revenue. We're looking at concerns that we have as we look at balancing this 2024 budget. Wage increases in our estimates in our first state council are projected at 3%, but we are in negotiations. And so obviously we'll know as we get to the close of those negotiations where those wages will be, but at 3%, this budget you see is based on a 3% increase. If it was 4%, it'll add another $152,000 to the 2024 budget. If it was 5%, it'll add another $304,000 to the 2024 budget. Again, as with everybody else, high inflation impacts the municipality's labor and operating costs, and that can affect us as well going forward. So we continue to keep a watch on that, and we make and adjust our projections for 2024 as in real time as that happens. One of the challenges we had, the big challenge we had, was a lower stock market in 2022. Actually increased our pension costs. And again, we have pensions for the various labor groups, particularly for police and fire, which are the 2 biggest pension funds that we had. I think it was a year or so ago, before before inflation hit, the police pension fund was funded at about a 92% level, and we were at 92% level, which was extraordinary because I think 10 years ago it was in the 50s in terms of funding. And at that time, the fire pension was funded at a 102% level. Since the stock market has declined, we saw a significant drop. So we're now at I think 71% in the police, and the fire is a little bit better than that, but it's so they took big hits, which ultimately resulted in us having to pay more. We have to pay what's called a minimum municipal obligation to the pension, those pension funds, as mandated by the state, and so that increases how much the fund decreases. That increases how much our obligation is, really, and the goal is to get the fund whole and keep it whole, so that we can lower and not have to pay as much into making those funds whole. So that's an area in terms of just increases in that gap in dealing with revenue that we have to raise to cover those expenditures. Another area is recreation. The municipality and the council has had a goal really since I came. One of their stated goal is to create more recreational and leisure services activities for quality of life for residents. That's why we purchased the former PAL building and converted it into a recreation center. And it's why we're embarking on right now a master plan redevelopment for Harding Boulevard to build a new recreation center. And it's why we petitioned the county for ARPA funds to help fund that recreation center. Well, one of the things, and that's pretty much in response to a lot of citizens' requests to council that we want a recreation center, and that the community deserves it. And so, obviously, that's going to be more staff, more operating costs if we get a new facility to do that. And one of the first steps toward that plan, and we had a multi-year plan in place, and we've been working on it. We had planned that the second half of 2023, we would bring on the municipality's first recreation director, and we would do another increase in staff to accommodate operations with that. And so there'll be there'll be an expansion in that budget for that. But imagine that if a 20 to 25,000 square foot recreation facility is ultimately built, that would be a significant undertaking in terms of costs to cover operations, maintenance, staffing, etc. Related to that. So those are things that as we're developing our budgets, and we look at, starting a few years ago, we look at our budgets in 5-year chunks. And certainly we're trying to plan and look at what the impact is going to be not only for the budget year we're working on, but for 4 years beyond that as well. So in terms of options to reduce that gap, one of the things that we're looking at, most folks may know that the municipality a few years back purchased the property at the corner of DeKalb and Main, and for the purpose of redevelopment. And one of those purposes in that redevelopment is that the municipality would get money back that it invested in that acquisition. So we expect in 2024 that deal will be closed, and we have been working with the developer that was selected for that project, and we will apply, we will get the $2.5 million sale price that we had for that land. So we did do better than we paid it for in that acquisition, and apply $1.5 million of those, that $2.5 million towards general fund support, which would help us not have to tax that $1.5 million if that's what council ultimately chooses. We can also increase the taxes another mill, which would again raise $890,676. We can use ARPA funds, as we have done in the last couple of years, to not have to utilize tax funds to cover the gap. And we'll talk a little bit later about how, not actually addressing it in a way that is self-sustaining is really not the good way to do it, because ARPA funds are going to run out. They have to all be expended by 2026. They have to all be committed by into 2024. And once you get to that point, you still have the gap if you haven't addressed it in some other way. And then we will continue to refine our revenue estimates and look at if there are ways that we can cut our operating costs in the organization. I will say we have operated a very lean organization for the last 10 years, and typically our operating costs flow along the lines of, one, whatever is negotiated in labor agreements, and two, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 4.7% in terms of inflation related to operations. So we don't really have large operating cost increases, pretty fluid and flat and easily trackable in terms of what's going on both in those contracts and in the inflationary environment. We also have to, as we say, we can look at those expenditures we have and look for cuts there. But the goal is certainly at the very least maintain the core operations that the municipality has. And then one of the things we're looking at is in terms of, kind of stifling the long-term impact on budgets and needs for adjusting the millage rate is that rather than rely on maybe wage increases to enhance employee salaries and deal with employee morale, that we look at bonuses, which can be treated differently and are just year-to-year impacts and not long-term impacts. So we're looking at those as well. So now I'm going to bring up Kathy Pfister, our Director of Finance, and kind of walk you through revenue and expenditure summaries for the municipality.
Thank you, sir. Okay, these are the details for the revenue. As you can see, in here. The budget for 2023 was $40.3 million, and our proposed for 2024 is $41.6 million. So with the $1.3 million increase in revenue, it is primarily involved here with the real property taxes and other local taxes. These two items make up 72% of our revenue. So this is where we're going to focus our interest in. This is the taxable assessed value. This is what is our real estate taxes based on. And as you can see, from 2013 through 2023, it has remained relatively flat. It's only increased 2%. So we're a fully developed municipality, so the only way this will increase is if we have new development, which there are several things in the works to help us with that. The last couple of years it has started to increase, so that has helped relieve the pressure on real estate taxes increases. The other major item for revenue is our other local taxes, Act 511. It's the largest item in here is earned income tax, and it has increased $4 million over 10 years. So that's approximately $400,000 a year. So again, if we add more businesses, that will help with the increase of our revenue here. The next slide is this is the makeup of our expenditures. And as Cranville said, the largest part of our expenditure is people costs. Half of it is salary, then we have retirement costs, and we have benefits. So a total of 85% of our expenditures are related to salary, or to our people. 19% is operating costs, and 6% is debt. This is the detail of our expenditures by department. So again, the budget in total is 40.3 from last year, and proposed is 42.3. So that's an increase of $2 million, but our revenues only increased $1.3 million. So again, that's where the $700,000 comes from that we need to find, how to close that gap. And you can see here the police department and the fire department are our biggest expenditures. Safety. This is a summary of our expenditures. Again, 26% is our personnel, operating, solid waste, and that's what makes up our total $42 million of expenditures. If you exclude solid waste, the personnel is 71%, 72%. This is the net effect. Our revenue is 41.6, our expenditures are 42.3, and that's the $736,000 shortfall. And our revenue goes up 3%, but our expenditures go up higher at 4.9. This shows you the budget trends. from 2019 to 2024. 2019 we're at 35 million, and up to 2024 is 42 million. This shows that each year that we've increased our tax rates. So on average over these 5 years, we've increased about a $500,000 to meet those goals. And finally, these are our options to meet that, to balance the budget. We can reduce expenses, use our fund balance, increase taxes, or use the ARPA funds. This is the last year we have that we can use the ARPA funds for general budget support. Expenses, if we reduce expenses, we have issues here. We still need to maintain our current service levels. We're limited by contracts or union contracts. We have 5 that we're limited by those contracts. Inflation continues to cause pressure on our expenses. Personnel costs are most of our expenses. And if we did furloughs, then again we're reducing our services, and we're also causing reduced employee morale. Another option is use fund balance. We've used fund balance a lot in the past. We used 3 of the 4 years between 2017 and 2020. We've used ARPA funds for the last 2 years, and it does not look good when you're continuing to use fund balance. When you go to credit agencies to borrow money for the building, for anything that we need to borrow money for, it increases our interest costs. So the goal is to keep a healthy fund balance and stop. Don't use it unless there's a significant reason. We have future projects, like Crandall mentioned. We have the rec center that we want to build, and also firehouses in the future. These are the things that the rating agencies look for if we want to keep a good, healthy rating and keep our interest rates low. Healthy fund balance, we've reached our 30% goal. We want to maintain that. Good financial policies and practices, we have that. We have policies in place, good planning, and budget controls. Our economic outlook, one of the things they look at is that chart I showed you earlier, that our tax base is sluggish. There's a lot of things in the planning that hopefully that will continue to go up, and that will reflect highly on us. And also they look at the willingness to raise taxes and not use fund balance. So they do watch that. Tax increase. We never want to increase taxes, but we don't have a choice. We last raised taxes in 2023. We went from 16 mil to 17. 1 mil, as Crandall mentioned earlier, is $890,000. This year, trash fees for our contract is increasing by $26 a unit. So this would be the impact if we decided to raise taxes. For a single property, the average current tax is $1,202. If we increase the quarter mil taxes, and including the trash fees, their annual taxes would go up $44. If we increased a half a mil, a single unit would go up $61. In comparison, a quadruplex, that would go up $127 for 1/4 mil, and it would go up $149 a year for a half a mil. So that would be the impact on our taxpayers. ARPA funds. This is our final year to use ARPA funds. We've used it the past 2 years. It's, again, like Crandall mentioned, it's a short-term solution. If you don't correct the problems behind the imbalance, it'll just multiply for the following year. ARPA funds, you're permitted a certain amount of money for revenue loss related to COVID. We have $1.8 million left in that bucket that we can use. Last year we had a $2.8 million shortage, and we split it among 3 areas. We used ARPA funds, we increased taxes 1 mil, and we refined our projections a little bit more. So that's how we handled it last year. Our recommended solution this year is increase taxes a $0.25 mil. That'll generate $222,000. And then again go into the ARPA funds, but only use $513,000 for that, and that would meet our shortfall. We also recommend the remaining $1.2 million of this revenue loss category is to move it into our capital improvement funds, so we can use that for future projects rather than going out and having to borrow money, and that would save us going down the road. Do you want to take over?
Sure.
Wrap it up?
Sure. Thank you, Kathy. So to wrap up, we, again, effective today, have this proposed budget available for public review. We've got public meetings scheduled. This is one of those public meetings that we have scheduled at Municipal Hall. The next one's on Wednesday, November 15th. Again at 6 p.m. and then Monday, November 20th. And we are required to do 2, but we always do 3 because we recognize that some people don't work. Some people work during the evenings and may not be available to come, and so we want to give them that opportunity. Once we get in front of council with a proposed budget ordinance to adopt with a millage rate that is set in that budget ordinance, once we publish that budget ordinance, the council cannot raise the millage rate, but they can lower. And so we will be judicious as we go through this process to get it in front of council. The goal is to have a final adoption of the 2024 budget by December 5th. We actually have until December 31st in which we have to present a balanced, and council has to adopt a balanced budget, but we're right on target around the first meeting of December. Last meeting of November, we typically try to get budget settled and out of the way. So we encourage folks to show up and to one of these meetings, ask whatever questions you want. Again, you can go to all of our social media and get access to a copy not only of this presentation, but of the budget detail as well. So every line of the budget is available to the public to see, and if you want to come to Municipal Hall, we certainly can make copies available to you as well. Thank you for your attention. We will be running this presentation itself on our media for folks who cannot make it to any of the meetings. Thank you to the team for the work you've done in doing this, and we look forward to going forward and adopting a budget by December 25th. Thank you.